My name is Ryder. I'm 35 now, but this happened 16 years ago when I was just 19. It was the summer after my first year of college. I'd just bombed my finals, gone through a messy breakup, and was questioning if college was even the right path for me. You know the kind of mental spiral you fall into when everything in your life suddenly feels pointless. My cousin Noah offered to let me stay with him and his family on their property out in Arkansas for the summer. Said I could help out on the farm, clear my head, get away from the city noise. Their farm sits right on the edge of the Ouachita National Forest. It's about 40 acres of pasture, a small pond, a red barn that's been patched up way too many times, and an old farmhouse with a wide back porch that faces the woods. You walk 10 minutes from that porch, and you're swallowed by trees. No cell signal, no trail signs, just raw, tangled nature. At the time, I was city through and through. I thought staying there would be peaceful. No traffic, no loud neighbors, no campus parties keeping me up till 3 a.m. Just fresh air, quiet chores, and the occasional beer with my cousin. I didn't expect anything weird. The first few days were uneventful. Hot mornings, chores in the barn, iced tea on the porch. Noah and I would shoot the breeze, talk about dumb stuff. His dog Buster, this chunky golden retriever mix, would follow us around like a shadow. It was kind of nice. I started sleeping better, eating better, feeling like myself again. But then came the hike. The second week I was there, Noah asked if I wanted to check out one of the old trails behind the property. Said we'd take Buster, bring some water, be back before sundown. I said sure, why not? We left around 4 p.m. Water bottles slung over our shoulders, flashlights clipped to our belts even though the sun was still high. The trail was more of a memory than a path, overgrown. Ticks waiting on every blade of grass. You could tell it hadn't been walked in years, but Buster was loving it. Tongue out, tail wagging, darting between trees. That dog was pure joy. About 30 minutes in, we hit this dip in the land where the trail disappeared completely into brush and thickets. Noah paused, pointing out a narrow path between the briars. Said it used to be part of a logging route decades ago. That's when Buster stopped. He just froze. Mid-stride. Hackles up. His eyes locked on a thick patch of brush to our right. I remember thinking it was probably a deer or a raccoon. Noah turned on his flashlight, even though we didn't really need it yet. The beam cut through the branches and landed on something. Something pale, tall, thin. It moved, fast. It ducked low and bolted into the deeper trees. It wasn't an animal, not really. It ran upright, 2 legs, skin like old paper, and it moved like it knew we were watching. Noah and I just stared at each other. Then, without a word, we both turned around and walked back. Fast. We didn't run. But we didn't talk either. Back at the house, we told his mum we'd just gotten turned around. She shrugged it off. Said dinner would be ready in 30. We never told her what we saw. Just brushed it off between us. Maybe a poacher, or some crackhead living off the grid. But neither of us believed that. 2 nights later, around dusk, Buster refused to come inside. He stood on the back porch, stiff as a statue, staring toward the tree line. Wouldn't respond to calls, wouldn't move, just growled. Noah finally had to go out and carry him inside. That night, around 3 a.m., we both woke up to Buster barking like his tail was on fire. He was at the back door, pawing at it like he was trying to escape. Noah opened it, and Buster bolted, straight into the dark, right toward the trees. We grabbed our flashlights and followed, calling his name. The barking echoed through the woods. Then, a yelp, sharp, high, painful, and then silence. We waited. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. At dawn, we found him. He was lying just outside the tree line, alive, but trembling, eyes wide, fixed on nothing. He didn't respond to touch, wouldn't eat, wouldn't bark. We took him to the vet. They ran tests, found nothing wrong, but he never went near the woods again. Not once. A few days later, Noah's mom made us camp in the living room. She'd seen something. She said it was standing in the thicket, watching the house. Her words, too still to be a man, too long to be a deer. She'd lived there 20 years, never seen anything like it. We covered the windows after that, didn't go outside after dark, not even to check the chickens. One night, we heard scratching. Not on the porch, not at the windows, underneath. Something was crawling in the crawl space beneath the house. Buster whimpered all night. We didn't sleep. The next day, Noah found handprints on the basement windows. Not fingerprints, handprints, full palms, long fingers, smudged like someone, or something, was pressing their face and hands against the glass. The next week, we boarded up the back of the house. Noah's dad said it was probably a trespasser, someone high, maybe dangerous. But that didn't explain the way the motion lights would trigger at 2 a.m., even when no one was there. Didn't explain the smell either, this rotting metallic stink that would come and go, like burnt pennies and wet earth. I asked Noah if he'd seen that thing again. He just shook his head. But I knew he had. I left a week early, said I had to get back to school. But really, I just couldn't take it anymore. Whatever we saw in those woods, whatever followed us back, it wasn't human. And it wasn't gone. Noah still lives there. He keeps a rifle by every window. A spotlight pointed at the thicket, and a dog that never goes outside alone. The back trail is overgrown now, swallowed up by nature, and no one, not even the locals, goes past the thicket line anymore.
My name's Eliza. This happened when I was 17, in a town that barely shows up on maps, about 20 minutes outside of Billings, Montana. You drive past grain silos, a broken gas station with one working pump, and an old general store that smells like mothballs and fried onions. Our house was near the edge of town, where the paved road turned to gravel and the mailboxes leaned sideways. Behind our house was a wide golden field, tall grass that swayed like water, dotted with hay bales and dragonflies. I used to love that view. Thought it was peaceful. But beyond that field, right at the edge of the pine trees, stood a house. It wasn't just old. It looked forgotten. The roof sagged like a broken spine. The porch was warped, half sunken into the ground. The windows were jagged with cracked glass. Some were just empty holes. It gave me a weird feeling. Always had. My mom said it belonged to a man named Walter, who went missing before I was born. Just wandered off one day, she said, like that was normal. No one had lived there since. I always figured it would eventually fall in on itself, nature reclaiming things. But somehow, year after year, it stayed standing, like it was waiting. One summer night, my best friend Talia came over for a sleepover. My mom was working the night shift at the clinic, and it was just the two of us. We stayed up late watching scary movies and eating cookie dough from the tub. Classic high school stuff. Around midnight, the power cut out. Just like that. Total darkness. We lit a couple candles and kept laughing, pretending it was no big deal. Then Talia stood up and looked out the back window. I remember her face changing. She whispered, "Is that A light? I walked over, and there it was. A flickering orange light. Inside the old house, behind the field. It was moving, like someone walking with a lantern. I felt my stomach drop. That house hadn't had power in decades. No one had lived there in my lifetime. The whole place was supposed to be condemned. At first, we thought it might be squatters, some drifter with a camping lantern. But the movement was too smooth, too intentional. Talia dared me to yell out. I didn't. We kept watching. The light moved through what would have been the downstairs hallway, then slowly drifted upward, to the second floor. Only problem? That house didn't have a second floor anymore. The ceiling had collapsed years ago. Everyone knew that. We stood frozen at the window. Then, just as we were about to pull away, something passed in front of the light. A silhouette, tall, thin, arms way too long, head slightly tilted like it was listening. Then, the light went out. Talia grabbed my arm so hard she left a bruise. I told her it had to be a trick. Reflected light. Shadows. You know, whatever excuse I could find. But we didn't believe that. The next morning, we walked to the edge of the field, just to look. And that's when we saw them. Footprints. Deep ones. Barefoot. 5 toes. Human-shaped but massive. Leading from the old house, across the field, to our house. They stopped right under my bedroom window. We ran back inside and locked every door, every window. Called my mom, but, of course, she didn't answer. Later that week, she came home around 2:30 in the morning and asked us why we were dragging furniture across the floor. We hadn't. She said she heard it from outside while she parked. A chair scraping. Coming from the second floor of the house behind the field. Again, there was no second floor. That night, I dreamed someone was standing outside my window. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there, breathing heavy, pressing against the glass. In the morning, there was a smear on the window, like someone had been there. Mom said maybe it was condensation. Maybe. 2 days later, the back door was open when we woke up. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was moved. But the hinges were bent. Bent outward. Like something strong had pushed its way in and left again. Talia wouldn't come over after that. I stopped sleeping in my room. Moved to the couch with the lights on. The last straw was this. One night, I woke up at 1:47 a.m. There was a sound, like floorboards, underweight, but not from our house. It was coming from the field. I looked out the window, and there it was. The light. That same orange flicker, moving again through the trees. This time, it didn't go into the house. It was coming toward ours. Slow. Steady. I didn't wake my mom. I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, watching it get closer, until it disappeared behind the shed. I waited. For minutes. Maybe longer. I don't know. Then, a creak. At the front door. Not a knock. A creak. I locked myself in the bathroom. Held a kitchen knife in my lap until the sun came up. We moved 3 weeks later. Haven't been back since.
My name's Greg. This happened back in 2009, when I was 22 years old and between jobs. I'd just finished a short construction gig in Louisville and was crashing on a buddy's couch when I found a listing for a temporary fencing job out in eastern Kentucky, near the edge of Daniel Boone National Forest. The pay was decent, lodging included. No interviews, just a phone call. The guy on the other end spoke in a low, gravelly voice. Said his name was Mr. Dowser. Said he needed someone to reinforce the fencing around his property before things got too cold. Didn't elaborate. I should have known then. His place was deep country. I mean, no street signs, no cell reception. No lights but stars and lightning bugs. He lived on 60 acres of overgrown pasture, woods, and a rotting orchard to the west. The farmhouse was old, creaky, and smelled like tobacco and rust. Mr. Dowser was in his 70s, wore denim overalls and chewed something I didn't ask about. He had 2 cows, a rusted truck, a double-barrel shotgun, and a list of rules. He handed me a paper the second I stepped onto the porch. Rule number 1, never work past sundown. Rule number 2, if you hear the wind shift, go inside. Rule number 3, if you see the red lantern swinging in the orchard, run. I chuckled when I read it. He didn't. I asked about the lantern thing, half joking. He looked at me like I was already dead. Said, "Ain't for you to see." I figured it was just some weird way to keep trespassers out. Local folklore. You know how rural places are. Every dead tree has a ghost story. He put me up in this small guest cabin near the barn. 1 room, cotangent, wood stove. No bathroom, but it had electricity. The fence work was simple. Dig, post, staple, repeat. I stayed busy during the day, kept to myself at night. But the second night, I stayed there. Everything changed. I woke up just past midnight. Couldn't say why. No dreams, no sounds. Just that weird instinct that makes your skin crawl. Then I heard it. It was like wind, but different, hollow, like it was threading through something delicate. Then I noticed a glow through the back window, a red light, swinging, in the orchard. It wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't fire. It was red, deep and glassy, like an old oil lantern. And it was moving, back and forth, like someone carrying it slowly between trees. Only I couldn't see who. I just stared, not blinking. Then the lantern stopped and lunged forward. Just a sudden jerk toward my cabin, like it had been yanked. I stumbled back, knocked over the little table next to the cot. But the light was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat there with my work gloves on and a hammer in my lap. The next morning, I confronted Mr. Dowser. Told him I saw the lantern. He spat into the dirt and didn't look at me. Told you, boy. You see it, you run. Every 10 years or so, it comes back, looking. For what? I don't know. But it don't like guests. He made me sign a waiver that afternoon. Legal looking, full of disclaimers. Said if I stayed, he wasn't responsible for what happened after dark. I almost packed up. But the stubborn part of me, the broke part of me, wanted that paycheck. So I stayed. The third night was the worst. It was cold. Frost on the window kind of cold. I bundled up and fell asleep around 10. Woke up to knocking. It was deliberate. 3 spaced knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then came the voice, low, raspy, like it had swallowed smoke. "Don't be shy, son. It's cold out here." My heart stopped, because Mr. Dowser didn't have a southern accent, but the voice outside did, thick, slow, like syrup over gravel. I inched toward the window, pulled the curtain just an inch, and there it was, red light, spilling under the door, like blood under a crack. I backed into the corner, grabbed the shotgun he'd let me keep for snakes. I stayed there until morning. When the sun came up, the light was gone. There were no footprints, no marks, but the doorknob was warm, too warm, like someone had been holding it. I packed my stuff and left that afternoon. Didn't even ask for my last check. Didn't say goodbye. Just drove until I hit paved roads and signal bars. That was 15 years ago. I don't camp anymore. I don't work rural jobs. And I never ask about lanterns. My name's Dustin. I'm 31 now, but this happened when I was 25. Back then, I was living in Kansas City, working long hours at a warehouse job that didn't pay well and didn't leave me with much at the end of the week, except sore knees and microwave dinners. My life wasn't going anywhere, and when my uncle passed away, I saw it as a weird kind of sign. He'd owned a 100-acre farm just outside of a little town in Missouri called Mercer. Place was about as rural as it gets. No gas station, one church, and a diner that closed before sunset. My cousin didn't want the property, said it gave him the creeps even when we were kids, and he hadn't been back since 2009. So the deed passed to me. I didn't ask questions. I just packed up what little I owned and left the city behind. I thought I was starting over. The farmhouse was old but solid. It creaked, and the water took forever to heat up, but the bones were good. My uncle had lived there alone the last 20 years of his life. Never married. Didn't talk to the neighbors. The only thing he seemed to care about was his land. The barn was falling apart. Most of the fields were overgrown with switchgrass, but behind the house, maybe 30, 40 yards back, was this towering rusted grain silo, about 30 feet tall, cylindrical, steel panels faded orange with time. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. My uncle never mentioned it in his will. My dad said it had been there since the 70s, and as far as anyone knew, it was just another leftover from the days when the farm was working. But even from the start, something about that silo made me uneasy. It wasn't just the way it looked, though it did look out of place, like it belonged in an abandoned war zone, not a cornfield. It was the feeling I got whenever I looked at it, like it was watching me. I figured I was just being dramatic. I was alone for the first time in my life, way out in the country, no streetlights, no sirens, no neighbors to yell hello at. I chalked it up to nerves. But then the noises started. It was sometime in the second week. I was outside after midnight, fixing part of the north fence that had fallen during a storm the day before. It was quiet, real quiet. I remember how loud the cicadas had been earlier that evening, but by midnight, they were gone. That was when I heard it, a long, metallic groan, like pressure being released inside a giant pipe. It echoed across the field. I stopped working and looked over my shoulder. It was coming from the silo. The sound was deep and low, like something heavy shifting inside it. Not fast, just moving, scraping. I waited. Then it stopped. No wind, no animals, no signs of life. I told myself it was probably heat expansion, or the wind catching one of the panels, but it stuck with me. The next morning, I went out to check it. The thing didn't have a ladder, which I always found strange. Most silos do, even if it's just for maintenance. This one had no access point, no door, just a sealed base and a rusted roof hatch 20 feet up. I circled it twice. No handholds, no markings, just steel and rust and silence. But I did find something else. Muddy footprints, human footprints, barefoot. They started at the back of the silo, in the grass where the shade kept the ground soft, and led all the way to the edge of my porch. There weren't many, 5, maybe 6 prints, but they were fresh, and they weren't mine. I live alone. The nearest neighbor is over a mile away, and he's 83. These prints were small, narrow, like someone malnourished had walked barefoot across my lawn in the middle of the night. I stared at them for a long time. Then I went inside, locked the doors, and dug my dad's old .22 rifle out of the closet. I hadn't shot a gun in years, but I loaded it and kept it by the couch. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there, lights off, staring at the front window. Around 3:15 a.m., I heard it again, the groaning, but this time it didn't fade. It was followed by something else. 3 loud, deliberate taps, not on the wall, not on the window, on the roof, like knuckles on tin. My stomach turned to ice. I stood up, grabbed the rifle, and turned on the floodlight outside. Then I stepped onto the porch. The night was still. Crickets had stopped. No wind, no rustling, just silence. I looked around. No signs of anyone. But when I glanced up, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The silo's roof hatch, the one sealed shut by decades of rust, was wide open. The steel flap dangled crookedly, like it had been pulled from the inside. I backed inside and locked the door. The next morning, I called the sheriff's department. A man named Hardy came out. Sheriff Hardy, late 60s, been in Mercer his whole life. Tough as they come. He checked out the prints, asked a few questions. I told him about the tapping and the open hatch. He nodded along, then said maybe some teens were messing around, same way they did last year with the old water tower across town. I pointed out that the hatch was 20 feet up and sealed shut. No ladder, no rope. He just shrugged and said, "Kids get clever." He gave me a pat on the shoulder and told me to keep an eye on things. Then he drove off. I started keeping the rifle beside me at all times. 2 nights later, I was woken by something new. Not groaning, not tapping, laughing, coming from the silo. I lay in bed, heart racing, listening. It wasn't loud, not wild or shrill, just subtle. Slow, steady chuckles echoing off the steel, like someone was trying to hold it in, like they were amused, like they were watching. I sat there, frozen, for over an hour. I didn't go outside. I didn't move. I just stared out the window, waiting. Eventually, the laughing stopped. By sunrise, I checked again. The hatch was shut. I told myself it was the wind. Maybe an animal got stuck inside, an echo, but I knew better. I didn't leave the house for 2 days after that. Then the last night came. I had gone to bed early. I was exhausted, mentally more than physically. I left the lights on in the hallway and kept the rifle next to the bed. At 2:03 a.m., I was woken by the sound of my front door opening. Not knocking, not someone trying the handle. Opening. I had locked it. I double-checked every night. I was sure of it. I grabbed the rifle, stumbled out of bed and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Then I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate, walking away. I rushed to the front window and looked out. And what I saw will never leave me. There was a man, or something shaped like a man, walking barefoot toward the silo. But it wasn't right. He was tall, gaunt, naked. His skin pale like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His arms were too long, his legs bent wrong. And he walked like he didn't have joints, like his limbs were made of rope. He didn't turn around. He just kept walking. He reached the silo, placed both hands on the metal like he'd done it 1,000 times, and began to climb. No ladder, no equipment, just fingers digging into rust like it was soft clay. He climbed all the way to the top and disappeared into the open hatch. Gone. I don't remember breathing. I locked every door, every window. I pulled the fridge in front of the back door and sat on the couch, with my rifle clutched in both hands. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I packed my truck. I didn't even care about clothes. I just took some papers, my phone charger, and a photo of my mum. Then I drove. I didn't stop until I hit the state line. I called a realtor from the road, told her I wanted the property listed immediately. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about fixing it up. I just wanted it gone. She sold it 6 weeks later. I don't know who bought it. I don't want to know. Sometimes, when I'm driving through that part of the state, I'll pass a sign for Mercer. I keep my eyes forward. I don't look for the silo. I don't ever want to know what was living in that tower.
My name's Kayla. I'm 26 now, but this happened when I was 19. Back when I thought I had the whole world figured out. Back when I didn't believe in anything I couldn't touch. I live in a place called Churton, Iowa. If you've never heard of it, that's exactly the point. Population hovers around 350, give or take. One gas station, one school, 2 churches. No Starbucks, no Uber, no nothing. People grow up here, leave if they can, or stay if they're too tired to run anymore. I was still deciding which of those I was going to be. Back then, my best friend was Maddie. She'd just come back from her first semester at community college, and we were trying to act like we hadn't changed. Like the summer before still mattered. We were driving home from a party in Jefferson, out on the far side of Greene County. I remember it was cold for October. Misty, too. The kind of night where your headlights don't help much, and the road feels narrower than it actually is. It was about 1:30 in the morning. The air inside the car was warm and quiet, and Maddie had her feet up on the dash, humming along to the radio, when she looked over and said something that changed everything. She said, "Take Bailey." I glanced at her like she'd just suggested we drive into a lake. "Bailey Road?" I asked. She nodded, smiling. "Come on," she said. "You know the stories." I did. Bailey Road is a 6-mile stretch of gravel about 7 miles outside of Churton, a kind of shortcut between 2 forgotten highways. Every small town has its local ghost story, and Bailey was ours. People say it's haunted, but no one agrees on by what. Some say it's the ghost of a farmer who went missing. Others say a little boy who drowned in the creek appears in your back seat if you drive too fast. But the one that always stuck with me was the truck. A beat-up blue Ford from the 1960s. Rusty grille. Headlights like 2 sickly eyes. They say it shows up behind you without warning. Follows you close. Too close. And if you stop, it disappears. I didn't believe any of it. I never had. But that night, I was tired. Maybe a little drunk. Maybe a little too eager to impress Maddie. So I turned the wheel, and we took Bailey Road. The first mile was uneventful. Just gravel crunching under the tires and the sound of the wind moving through the corn. No other cars. No lights. Just us. The fog started to roll in around mile 2. It was thick. Unnatural. Like smoke pouring off the fields. I slowed down. Turned off the radio. Maddie started to get quiet. She tucked her feet down from the dash and sat up straight. I didn't say anything at first, but then I noticed her looking into the side mirror. "What's wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just pointed behind us. I looked, and that's when I saw them. Headlights. A pair of old yellowish lights about 100 feet back. Faint at first, but getting closer. I tapped the brakes. The truck kept pace. "Do you see it?" I whispered. Maddie nodded slowly. The vehicle behind us was unmistakable. A blue Ford, or what used to be blue. The paint had faded, flaked. The hood looked warped. And the front grille, it was wrong. Bent inward, like it had hit something big and never been repaired. I slowed down. It slowed too. I sped up. So did it. Not fast, not erratic, just steady. Matching me exactly. Maddie gripped the door handle like she was ready to jump out at any second. "Pull over," she whispered. But something in me said no. That truck didn't feel real. I can't explain it. But it didn't move like a normal vehicle. It didn't bounce over the gravel. The headlights didn't sway with the motion. It just glided, smooth and dead. We passed the 3-mile marker. My hands were sweating on the wheel. I turned suddenly, sharp right, down a narrow trail that led to an old access road. One of those dirt paths that ends at a closed-off gate. The kind no one uses anymore. The truck followed. I kept driving until I hit the dead end. Then I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I stopped. The truck rolled up behind us. Then the headlights shut off. Total darkness. My heart felt like it stopped beating. I stared into the rearview mirror, trying to adjust to the dark. I couldn't see the truck anymore, but I knew it was there. Then, the engine revved. Once, twice, 3 times. Low, long, like something clearing its throat. And then, silence. The kind of silence that presses against your skin. Maddie whispered, "Go." But I couldn't move. We sat like that for 5 minutes. Maybe more. Neither of us said a word. I didn't even blink. Then something in me clicked. I turned the wheel, stepped on the gas, and started to reverse. As I passed the place where the truck had been, there was nothing. No truck, no lights, no tire tracks. Just empty gravel. Maddie was staring through the window, eyes wide. "I saw him," she whispered. "Who?" She didn't answer for a moment. Then quietly she said, "There was a man, standing next to it, wearing overalls, tall, real tall, and he had a hat, but no face." I asked what she meant. She said, "It was just black, like something forgot to finish him." We drove back to town in silence. I never took Bailey Road again. 2 years later, during Thanksgiving, I told the story to my uncle. He'd grown up in Churton and had lived there his whole life. Tough guy, always carried a knife and a story. I was expecting him to laugh it off, but he didn't. He got real quiet. Then he asked, "Was it blue?" I said, "Yeah, blue, with rust stains." He nodded once, slow, then said, "That'd be Thomas's truck." I asked who Thomas was. He looked down at his plate. "Thomas Hale," he said. "Lived out there back in the 60s. Had a wife, 2 kids. Nobody liked him much. Said he was mean. The quiet kind of mean." One night, Thomas took his whole family out to dinner in Jefferson. No one thought much of it. They never came back. Police found their bodies buried in the back pasture a week later. All except for Thomas. "And the truck?" I asked. "Never found it." I haven't told many people this story. Most wouldn't believe it. But I know what I saw. And Maddie never spoke about that night again. Not once. I think part of her is still afraid saying it out loud will make it come back. And honestly, so am I.
My name's Eric. I'm 32 now, but I still remember the summer of 2005 like it just happened. I was 11. My little brother Noah was 9. That year, we spent July at our grandparents' ranch, outside a tiny Montana town called Deer Lodge. If you've never been there, it's the kind of place that feels stuck in time. Quiet, dry, surrounded by hills and fences and sky that never seems to end. My parents had to stay in Billings that summer, work stuff, so they dropped us off early, told us we'd get to be little cowboys for a few weeks. I liked that idea. My grandparents were kind, old school. Grandpa had worked that land his whole life, and even in his 70s, he still woke up before sunrise. My grandma made everything from scratch, even butter. She didn't believe in store-bought anything. We loved it. The air smelled like dust and hay, and every day had the same rhythm. Feed the cows in the morning, fix a fence or 2, haul hay bales from one side of the pasture to the other. By dinner, we were wiped out and happy. But that summer, something was different. It started during the second week of our stay. It was late afternoon, maybe 6:30. The sun was starting to dip behind the ridge, and the sky was turning that golden orange that makes everything look soft. We'd just finished stacking hay bales near the back pasture. Grandpa had driven the flatbed out while we helped lift and position. We were sweating through our shirts, covered in tiny hay cuts. But it was that kind of tired that feels good. Noah said he was thirsty and took off jogging toward the barn to grab water from the cooler. It was only about 300 feet up the hill. He came back 2 minutes later, pale as a sheet. I asked what was wrong, and he just pointed back toward the field. "There's someone out there," he said. I looked at Grandpa, assuming maybe he'd asked a ranch hand to help. But Grandpa was right beside me the whole time. "What do you mean?" I asked. "In the hayfield," he whispered, "just standing there." I squinted toward the tree line, and sure enough, someone was there, standing alone in the center of the field, far enough away that I couldn't make out a face, maybe 100 yards, but close enough to tell something wasn't right. The figure wasn't moving, just standing, straight, too straight, arms at its sides like it didn't know what to do with them. It was dressed in brown. Not clothes exactly, more like camouflage. Hard to say. It blended with the grass. But the thing that really stuck with me, what I still see when I close my eyes, was the way its head tilted, sharp, like a bird of prey, watching. I thought about shouting, but something in my gut said not to. Instead, I waved. No response, not even a twitch. I called out anyway. "Hey, you okay?" Still nothing. I took a step forward, and that's when it moved, but not like a person. It didn't walk or run. It glided, arms stiff, legs barely bending. It crossed that open field in less than 5 seconds, from the middle to the tree line, without making a sound. Then it was gone, vanished into the woods like smoke. Noah and I stood frozen. Even Grandpa looked uneasy. We didn't say much on the way back, just loaded into the truck and drove up to the house in silence. That night, Noah wouldn't stop fidgeting at dinner. Grandma noticed. "What's wrong, sugar?" she asked. He didn't answer, just pushed his mashed potatoes around with his fork. Finally, I spoke up. I told them what we saw. Grandma set her fork down, real gentle. Grandpa stayed quiet for a moment. Then he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "There's been a man showing up here every summer since I was a boy," he said. "Always in the hayfield. Always when the sun starts to set." Noah's eyes got big. I laughed. A nervous, too loud laugh. "You're kidding," I said. Grandpa shook his head. "First time I saw him, I was your age. What does he want?" "I don't think he wants anything. He doesn't talk, doesn't come closer. But if you ever go into the woods after him," he paused, "you don't come back the same." The room got quiet. I waited for the punchline. Some smirk, a wink, but Grandpa didn't laugh. And I knew, deep down, he wasn't joking. That night, I had trouble sleeping. The wind picked up around midnight, and the old house creaked in that way only country houses can. Every sound felt amplified. Distant owls, cows lowing, boards shifting. At one point, Noah climbed into my bed. He didn't say anything, just curled up next to me like we were 5 again. And that's how I knew he'd seen it too. Really seen it. The next day, Grandpa didn't take us to the back pasture. He said the fence near the goat pen needed work, so we stayed closer to the house. But even from there, I kept looking out toward the field, half expecting to see him, half hoping not to. Nothing happened for a few days. Things felt normal again. Noah and I got more comfortable, started playing in the hayloft like we used to. I convinced myself what we saw was a drifter, A ranch hand playing a prank. Something rational. Until Friday night. We'd stayed up late watching an old Western VHS in the upstairs den. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch, and I was about to do the same when he sat up suddenly. "I saw him," he whispered. I blinked. "What?" He got up and walked to the window. I followed, and there he was, the man, standing in the backyard, closer this time, maybe 20 feet from the house. Right behind the old metal swing, set Grandma never took down. Same posture, same head tilt, still, watching. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I felt paralyzed, like something had reached into my chest and squeezed. Noah grabbed my wrist, hard. We backed away from the window slowly. I reached for the lamp and shut it off. We waited in the dark. 10 seconds, 30, a minute. Then I looked again. He was gone. Vanished. The swing set wasn't even moving. We didn't sleep after that. We left the ranch a week early. My mum said we seemed tired, that we looked pale. We didn't explain. We just asked not to go back next year. And we didn't. That was the last summer we ever stayed at the ranch. Grandpa passed away a few years later. Grandma moved in with my aunt. I haven't seen the place since. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that field. And in it, the man, still watching, still waiting. I don't know who or what he was, but I know what I saw, and I know I was never supposed to follow him into the trees, because if I had, I wouldn't be the one telling this story.